preaching long. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Or some of you may be watching this in the evening, so good evening. We're glad you're here. We hope everybody in the United States had a good time for 4th of July. We did. We got to be with our friends and had a great time. And then last night we had a hurricane in Oklahoma. But I hope you're enjoying our teaching. As I always say for new people, when I read the Bible here, I'm not reading out of necessarily a King James version. I'm translating it and then teaching it from a metaphysical understanding. So that's what we do. So we're in Acts chapter 11 now. If you were with us for chapter 10, we were talking about Peter going to Cornelius' house, and Peter had to have a revelation before he went. And he received a tremendous revelation, which in just a short terms, it means nobody's left out. Everybody's one. So now what we're going to see is Peter is leaving. He's going back to Jerusalem. And now he's got to face the people that's going to be mad at him for going into the house of a Gentile, which are the religious leaders. So we're going to start at Acts 11, 1 through 3. And it says, "And the apostles and the brethren throughout Judea heard that the Gentiles also had received the Logos word of Elohim. And when Peter went up to Jerusalem, those of the circumcision, which was the Pharisees and Sadducees, contended with him, saying, You went into men's uncircumcised and you ate with them." So they were very upset about that. And so the verse reveals just how quickly, if you would, how quickly the revelation of a Cornelius' awakening traveled, because they knew about it before he got there.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think that would be an awesome day when a messenger gets up and teaches a truth, and people are so excited they go tell their friends and they tell their, and that's what happened here. But I don't doubt it was a negative thing, like you won't believe what he did, and that does happen. So this is the realm where tradition, where law, where doctrines that are governed by perception lived, if you would. So when they hear that the Gentiles have received the Logos word, it kind of sends shockwaves to them. We used to tell a joke about how certain religions, when they die and go to heaven, they're going to be shocked to see the people that's there. So this happened. So the Logos here is not a doctrine, but it's the inner revelation of union awareness. It's the inner revelation of unveiling the breath within everyone, and it's the inner revelation of the inward abundant life that everyone possesses, not necessarily living out of it, but it is within us. We have abundant life in every area of our life. So the news is not that Peter preached to the Gentiles so much, but that the Gentiles received the Logos and embraced it, because they didn't even think they were able to. So this confronts this very foundation of religious exclusivity. So many religions believe if you're not this religion, you're not included. I know one particular that believes if you're not that religion, you will never go to heaven. And so it's the same thing. It goes on generation after generation after generation. So Jerusalem symbolizes the inner realm where structured belief, traditions, and we could say religious authority resides. And Peter, which represents faith, must now return to face that very mindset that once shaped him. This return is not regression, but it's a confrontation. The circumcision party represents the part of consciousness that's committed to boundaries, to separation, to qualifications. I wrote a song recently out of the Psalms where it said the lines have come down. And Donna asked me, what does that mean, the lines have come down? Well, that's the lines that religion puts. You can only go so far. Once you cross this line, then they consider that you're doomed to hell or you're whatever. And so they're the voices that imprison and old definitions of holiness, and holiness was only for certain people or only if you followed certain rules. They do not celebrate the Gentiles' awakening. They're not excited about it because they wanted them to come and convert to that religion and go through the process and everything, and come to find out it didn't happen. So this mirrors the conflict within us when a new revelation threatens our old identity, when a new revelation threatens our belief systems, which we've all gone through that. And so whenever awareness expands, the old system always arises to challenge it. And like I say, it's the old systems are familiar. The songs, I saw a post today about people writing songs that don't use the word Jesus. I'm not saying it's about me, but it's amazing. And I replied to it. I replied a little while ago about it, because you can have songs that mention the word Jesus, but does it bring any peace or does it bring any help to you? Because you're singing about somebody far away and you're wishing they were with you and all that. That doesn't help whatsoever. The songs need to be the songs of love, the songs of peace, the songs of joy. So that's what happens. This old system always drives you back. So their acquisition reveals the depth of their separation thinking. Peter's actual offense in their eyes was not preaching, not teaching, or revealing truth. It was entering in that house and sitting with them and being with them. And in my past, I remember times when there were ministers that would go to places that the church didn't want to go. They would go to bars and minister to people. They would go to different places, and they were always pulled back and always said, you can't do that. Stay away from there. So this is the voice of the old self saying, you crossed the lines that we drew, and you treated the ones that we exclude as equal, and they didn't like it. You embraced those who we believe Elohim would reject. And that's a really big problem today, because there are people believe that God would reject the person because of the way they live, who they are, or whatever it is. So Peter's experience here with Cornelius must now confront Jerusalem and the heart of that old awareness. So we're going to see in verse 4 in my translation and explanation. But Peter explained the matter in order, saying, I was in the city of Joppa and conversing with breath within. So I was having a conversation with breath within me. And in an inward vision, I saw something descending like a great sheet let down from the higher realm by its four corners. And it came to me. When I looked upon it intently, I considered and saw forms of earthly creatures, beasts, creeping things, and birds of the air. And I heard a voice saying to me, Rise, Peter, awaken to your higher awareness, and receive without calling anything unclean. But I said, Not so, for nothing common or unclean has ever entered my mouth. And the voice spoke again from within the higher realm, What Elohim has cleansed, do not call unclean. This happened 3 times, and then all was drawn up again into the higher realm. And here again, we see the 3 times. We see this all through the Bible. So Peter does not argue, he reveals. Faith responds to the acquisition, not with defensiveness, but with clarity. He's recounting this to these people here in order to show them how now he understands the progressive unfolding of revelation. Every layer builds upon the last one. Each moment lifting from inherited belief to another raises the awareness higher and higher and higher. There's a verse in the Bible that says we're being changed from glory to glory, where glory is the view and the perception. So when it says the whole earth is filled with the glory of Elohim, it means the view and the perception. But within us, the view and the perception is our view and perception of the Word. So the more we understand, then it builds upon more and more and more. And this symbolizes openness. It symbolizes expansion. It symbolizes a willingness to see beyond the limits of tradition. Like, I'm always reminded of what Valerie Robinson said, you got to have the want to. You got to be willing. But when you're willing, it's there. It's not hard. You just say, here I am. I'm ready to hear. So the sheet again represents a vast field of consciousness. It represents the whole spectrum of earthly awareness. Its four corners signify universality. It signifies completeness. It signifies its inclusion of the four directions, meaning all creation, all humanity, all forms of awareness. So remember, every story in the Bible is about an awareness. And so that's how this picture is this. So creeping things signify undeveloped or fearful awareness. So when he talked about creeping animals, it signifies that. And birds of the air represent intellectual or elevated, but yet unstable awareness. You may be very smart, be very knowledgeable, but your awareness is very unstable. So Peter is seeing the spectrum of these inner states, the so-called clean or unclean, and he's being asked to behold humanity with the filters of Judaism's categories of separation. And so that's how he saw them, but then he heard, do not call these unclean. So every awareness is still clean. Yes?
Do you know what the word beasts?
Huh?
What does beast represent?
Beasts represent lower awarenesses. Lower awarenesses, yeah. But we used to think, well, those people back there where we were, they're wrong. Well, maybe not. For where they're at, they're still not unclean. They're just different levels of awareness. And I wrote a post about that the other day, about my songs, how I always wish that more people would hear them. But I also wrote that that's not my job. My job is not to beckon them to come. There's a place in the Bible that talks about that. When you prepare the meal, you don't beckon them to come, you don't beg them to come, you don't demand them to come. They'll come if they want to. If they don't come, they're okay. They're okay. They're just in that awareness. And when they die, they'll be where I am when I die. You know, the only thing is that they miss out on a lot of life now, or a lot of understanding now. So the voice does not tell Peter to eat the animals. It never did. The voice instructs him to rise, meaning to elevate your awareness above the boundaries that was imposed by religion. The voice is telling him, stop labeling. And we need to hear that. Oh, that person's this or that person's that. And we're in a society that likes to label. Mm-hmm. That person's gay, that person's an alcoholic, that person's a religious person, they're too religious. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. In other words, stop judging various states of awareness. I'm not talking about the person, but the various states of awareness. So nothing spirit formed is unclean. All are included in the breath. There's nobody less than I am. That's tough with a lot of people. So this is the end of religious and social exclusivity. Peter reveals his resistance during the dream. He's showing them the struggle that he had. And he's not rebellious, he's conditioned. His entire life he had been taught to divide, to separate, and to categorize. His object is not disobedience, but it's the voice of inherited awareness. He honestly believes purity lies in abstaining. That's what he believed. When purity actually lies in recognition. And I've been telling a lot of my friends lately, and I've told y'all this, it's not about believing, it's about recognition. You know, I can believe Ann and Carl are going to do something for me, but it's another thing just to recognize it. Because believe always implies there's something, I'm believing something's going to happen. You know, like I believe you love me, but I'm not really experiencing it. But recognizing is the experience. So, so what happened here then, no person or no group or no anybody is spiritually inferior. The distinction between Jew and Gentile, male or female, has no origin in Elohim. In breath, all are one. So to call what Elohim has cleansed unclean is to deny the truth of oneness. When I look at somebody and they do something that I think is really bad, to say they're unclean, to say they're sinners, to say they're going to go to hell, then we're not understanding union awareness. We're anti-Christ, if you would, anti-contact with Father, anti-everything that's true. And we've all been there before. So the sentence here ends all this religious exclusive forever. This happened 3 times then. And then all was drawn up again into the higher realm. So here, the number 3 establishes confirmation, and it establishes divine completeness. Sometimes you have to hear something over and over and over. Peter needed this repetition because the revelation contradicted a lifetime of conditioning. Sometimes when I share, when I'm on a Zoom meeting or I'm talking on the phone with people, quite often I don't do it on purpose, but quite often I will explain something 3 times just because I'm used to this anyways. But you need to hear this. If you don't understand it this way, I'll tell it to you this way, or I'll give you this story. So we saw the same thing in my book of John when I taught from it, after the Romans took Jesus and Peter denied Jesus 3 times, right? And then Jesus came back to him and said, Peter, you love me, Peter, you love me, Peter, you love me. He had to remind him 3 times. And then he said, go feed my sheep. There was no condemnation whatsoever. So the vision ended, and now let's go to verse 11. And behold, at the very moment, 3 men stood before the house where I was, Peter talking, sent to me from Caesarea, and breath in me impressed upon me to go with them without hesitation, making no distinction. Moreover, these 6 brethren accompanied me, and we entered the man's house, and he showed us how he had seen a messenger standing in his house, saying, send to Joppa and call for Simon, whose name is Peter, and he shall speak words to you by which you and all your household shall awaken to the life that is already yours. Not a life that you can get, not a life that you can earn. So behold, signals that Peter is calling attention to the divine timing. The moment the revelation is concluded, the messenger arrived, demonstrating that this outer circumstances align with Peter's inner awakening. So the 3 men correspond with this threefold repetition of the vision. Caesarea represents the realm of spiritual rulership and inner government. These men arriving symbolize inner faculties sent from a higher awareness, calling faith into action. So this is Breath's absolute rejection of separation thinking, giving Peter a direct internal mandate to move forward without hesitation, to don't be afraid, without questioning, without dividing, without evaluating worthiness, and go as the breath instructed. So many times in my life, in my past life, I felt like sometimes going somewhere and going to speaking to somebody, and I remember times when I thought, well, I don't know if they're ready. I don't know how they're going to treat me. I don't know how they're going to affect me. Well, Peter would have had that, but he had this great awakening, and he realized to go without question. When you hear the voice go, you go. Because if you don't, you're going to sit there and argue yourself out of it. So making no distinction means faith must stop separating Jew from Gentile and all that. And then these 6 brethren accompanied them, symbolizes the fullness of earthly expression. The 6 brethren represent the faculty of earthly awareness, now aligned with Peter's elevated faith, if you would. And they accompany him because revelation does not occur in isolation. In other words, you don't get this all by yourself. Too many people have heard something and they think they got it all by themselves, and they did it on their own, and then they begin to puff themselves up, and they begin to say, you can only hear it from me. And I've heard a lot of that. My daughter talks about that a lot. If somebody is telling you that you can only get it from them, she doesn't say run, but she says other things. But it's not true. So, and he showed us how he had seen these messengers send Joppa, means Cornelius recounts his visitation. a manifestation of inner illumination standing in his house, meaning within the center of his awareness. The messenger appears not as external being, but as a revelation clothed in clarity. So you have your own messenger. You don't have to have a physical messenger come to you, but your messenger is breath within inside of you. We could say it's the mind of Christ, the mind of contact. That's your messenger. And it says, and he shall speak words to you by which you and all your household shall awaken to the life that is already yours. This is a very explicit metaphysical statement in Acts here. Peter is not sent to give Cornelius life. He's sent to, he already possesses it. Peter is sent to speak words that will awaken Cornelius and his household to the divine life that they already have. We spend in Christianity and all other religions the majority of our time seeking something that we already have all the time. Fasting to get something we already have. Praying, giving, doing, all the lists that religion teaches us to do, we're wasting our time because when we do that, we are anti what we have and we drive it away from us. And I know so many people that believe the tithe teaching, that if you tithe, you will be blessed. If you tithe, it will come back to you tenfold. That's not true. And because of that, they were disappointed. And then they tithed out of need, right? And they tithed because it was required of them. And the Apostle Paul said, don't give because there's a need. Don't give begrudgingly. I promise you, many people were giving begrudgingly because they never saw the results of it. So he said, give hilariously out of the abundance of your heart. So when you are a natural giver, like you guys are, and I believe we are, we don't worry about will we get back or not. We just enjoy the giving. And when you enjoy the giving, you're recognizing that source in you, that unending supply that you will never run out. And you don't have to worry about, well, is there going to be enough in my checking account if I give this money? Because you just hear the voice. You're followed by wisdom. And I don't believe it's wisdom when you listen to a tithe teaching at all. It's not wisdom. It's old-fashioned. And the same thing about everything else. So we do not become one with Elohim. We realize we already are. I don't have to become one with anybody. I don't have to do something to be approved because I have been approved from eternity. Okay? Verse 15. And I began to speak. As I began to speak, breath energized their words just as breath did in us at the beginning. So he's talking to the Pharisees. Then I remembered the word of Jesus, how he said, John indeed immersed with water regarding sins, but you shall be immersed in the Logos, the creative spiritual movement and activity within you that reveals the spiritual law of abundant life in everyone. That's what we're immersed in. Elohim gave them the same awareness as us, who placed our spiritual well-being in what Jesus taught, and who was I stand. Let me say this again. Let me read this back again. So Elohim gave them the same awareness as us, who placed our spiritual well-being in what Jesus taught, and who was I stand when I stood against Elohim. I think I wrote that wrong. I need to correct that. It does not make sense.
Who was I to stand against Elohim?
Huh? Who was I? I'm reading it wrong. I'm sorry. Who was I to stand against Elohim? My eyes got dyslexia, I think. But who am I? You know, everybody, who am I to judge this person? I think I'm pretty high to do that. And I've done it in the past. But we don't do that anymore. So Peter's emphasizing, before he finished speaking, that breath animated the Gentiles' words in such a way that it animated the disciples' words at the Pentecost, at the day of Pentecost, when we said, they were told us they were filled with the Holy Spirit. They were not. They were filled with the Logos words. They were speaking Logos words. They were excited. They were being reminded what Jesus taught and said, oh, this is what he was saying. It was the Logos word, the fire of the word flying around him. He said the same thing happened to these Gentiles. The very same thing. So he's confronting these Jerusalem brethren with a profound truth. If the same breath moved in both groups, then both groups are equal. So Peter recalls this. Jesus' teaching is not a prediction of an event, but it's an unveiling of spiritual awareness. The only time Jesus, I think, ever spoke of an event that was going to take place is that when you see these signs, get out of Jerusalem, because that's when Titus is going to come in and kill all of you. That's not a prediction, that was a fact. But he wasn't predicting one of these days you're going to be holy. One of these days you're going to be pure. He was saying this is who you are right now. And this immersion is an inward, revelatory, transformed, universal, fully awakened awareness when Logos begins to move within inside of you. It's a tremendous awakening. And this awakening is not for Israel alone. It's the destiny of all mankind. And that's what the world needs, a great awakening. An awakening of love. I watched crowds together last night in those 4th of July celebrations in Washington, D.C. I was telling Carl, in the beginning there was 337,000 people there, all loving one another. And then the storm drove them away, but 100,000 came back. But I love seeing that. And I remember when the Twin Towers were bombed, America came together in such a way. People loved one another. You could tell it, you could see it. But what happens? The circumcision gets back in there. The law people, the bondage people, the people that see people as less than, and that's what religion does. And everything can be a religion. Politics can be a religion. The medical industry, the financial, it can all be a religion. So he concludes with absolute humility, who was I to stand against Elohim? This means I cannot hold to an exclusiveness anymore. And I think sometimes we need to say that sometimes to people when they start judging people. Who are you to make that decision? I mean, not me, but think about it. You're making a really strong decision. What gives you that authority? Well, the church says this. Well, that's not giving you the authority to say that. You know? So he said, I cannot judge unworthy because I only see worthy now. I'm awakened. I cannot preserve traditions when Elohim has transcended it. So Peter's acknowledging that resisting their awareness would mean resisting, is it getting late? Nope. Resisting their awakening would mean resisting the activity of breath within inside of us. This is the moment where Peter fully surrenders old identity, old boundaries, old religious conclusion, and he lets it go. And as I've said before, there are many people that I want to help, but they're not able to let go. And that song I wrote, you have to let go what is not before you can know what is. And that's why people sometimes say, I'm just having a hard time understanding what you're saying. And I've been saying this lately, it's because you won't let go of what's not true. You still embrace it. You still, it's precious to you. And some of the stuff that's precious is really bad. So, let me look at something here. So he said, when I heard this, they stopped resisting, and their thoughts became still. They honored Elohim, and realizing that the turning point in the awakening life was not limited to one people or one nation or one religion of our religion's understanding, but it also had been granted to all who were once considered outside. I look forward to the day that there will be no more religions. There will just be people of the earth. I wrote a song. I wanted to call it To the People of the Earth, but I called it America, Why the Hate? And it's going live at 5 o'clock today on Facebook. America, why the hate? Have you lost your love? Where is your love? People need to start asking that about, where is your love? Some people's never felt love whatsoever. So the brethren here represents the old, religious consciousness shaped by tradition, shaped by separation thinking, and they fall silent, and this silence is not resistance, but finally it's surrender. We've never been taught this before, but some of them finally surrendered. They are confronted by this revelation so clear, so undeniable, that it marks this turning point where religion surrenders their control. I so hunger for that.
Yes.
And it happened back then with these people. Old awareness falls silent because the truth has spoken louder. And that's when there's nothing left to say. Nothing left to say. So in closing, once their inner resistance dissolves, they move into an acknowledgement. They glorify Elohim. To do that is recognized in this magnitude of divine inclusiveness, to expand inwardly, to honor their breath for revealing that what's always been true. And you know, in my songs, Donna and I talk about this a lot. In my songs, we don't praise God, we don't sing praises to Jesus, but we do give thanks for presence. We glorify. I've got one song where I talk about how I glorify presence. And some people may not understand that, but presence is in me. It's Elohim in me. It's the very essence. It's the very energy. It's the very source of all life. And there's nothing wrong with giving thanks for that and singing songs for that. As one of that post I saw today, they got upset because somebody's not using the word Jesus. I don't know if it's me or somebody else, but I don't have to worship somebody 2026 years ago. What I'm doing is I'm recognizing what's inside of me. I no longer condemn myself. I no longer speak bad about myself. I asked Donna the other day, we were listening to my song, Living Life in Love, and I asked her, I said, do you love yourself? And that's a question people really need to ask. Do I love myself? Not your ego, not, sometimes we have some things that are not edifying. But guess what the Apostle Paul said? All things are lawful. Now, that's hard to understand for people. But what that means, there's nothing you can do that will separate you from who you are. So if you want to do it, go ahead. But there's consequences. I joke about ice cream. I love ice cream, and it's lawful. I can eat all the ice cream I want. But this body is going to suffer, but it's not going to separate me from who I am. So if you love yourself, which you should, then you take care of yourself, of course. But it's important to love yourself, because if you don't love yourself, then you won't love one another. So we glorify, and glorify means to make large, if you would. Like to glorify presence, it means to make large. So I make large Elohim within inside of me. I exalt Elohim within inside of me. All my songs are about the union with Elohim, and I make large my union with you too. And that's the best songs you can sing. So they finally see that life was never restricted of Israel. Union was never exclusive. Breath never belonged to the single tribe of one group or another, or one person, but it's the awakening, it's the universal oneness in all humanity. And I'll say this, even also, all animals are one. We're one with all creation. People used to make fun of people that go out and hug trees. Well, trees are full of life. I appreciate trees, don't you? Now, I'm not going to go hug them all. I tried one and I made a mistake. I was joking at one of our parties. It was a pine tree and it had a sap all over it. So I couldn't get off from it. But I'm not trying to be funny, but the truth is this earth is ours. And it's full of energy, everything that has energy. So I even give thanks for the clouds. I give thanks for the rain. I give thanks for the mountain. Norma had the most beautiful butterfly the other day, come on the front porch, and it come from down in the Gulf, and it comes up here when it's really hot. I've never seen one in my life. I've got a picture I'll show you later on, and it landed on her first.
I think
Her grandson. It landed on her grandson's finger, and just sat there and looked at him, and then it flew up about 2 foot and landed on Norma's finger. And she said it was such a spiritual thing. But see, that butterfly is filled with the life of Elohim, and it does what it's supposed to do. All animals, every bird, every creature is full, and they have never left their original state. Only man. And we are the crown glory of all creation, and only man did that. And the reason why, Ecclesiastes, Solomon says, man was born upright, but they created many contrivances. And when you look at the word contrivances, it's machinations. Machinations. It's contrivances, it's plots, and everything else they did, from luring themselves down to the carnal realm. But we are the bright and morning star. It wasn't no devil. It became a devil. Devil means traduce or hinder. So I love Peter's sermon, and I know I went through it pretty quick, but it's an amazing reminder that nothing is evil, nothing is separate, nothing is unreachable. All things are pure, and all things are holy, no matter what they're doing. Amen?
Amen.
Amen. Thank you for being with us today. I know my sermons are getting shorter and shorter, but next week, I promise you, I will go 1 hour. I love you. Have a great day. Continue to enjoy your 4th of July weekend, and we'll see you next week.